one deal, one time is changing this guy's life if he can pull it off. I've been working with this guy for a while. I'm going to call him Jim to protect his identity. I'm not going to give you the specifics on like the location of the deal because this deal is not done yet, but it is exciting. It's really intriguing. There's some ins and outs, but this is a deal that can make millions and millions of dollars. And if he never closes another deal, it doesn't matter. He will be set. I'm going to break that deal down to you, show you how it's going to work and why it's such a phenomenal, amazing deal. I'm excited about it. I'm also going to give you an update on the flex warehouse space. If you've been following me now, you've started to see me put out some reels about this. I was looking to raise some capital for this, and there's a lot of exciting stuff that's going on with the flex warehouse project that I want to keep you in the loop on. So let's start with the flex warehouse. It's a piece of land, 4.5 acres that I got under contract for half of market price in Somerville. We've engaged a engineer who is putting in 34 units. We're working on that to get our land disturbance permit. So we've gotten through the first round of approvals with the county. Everything's looking good. And I felt confident enough to start putting together an offering memorandum, an executive summary, and raising some capital from my investors for this deal. We need $1.5 million. We're personally putting in $300,000 on the sponsor side. Investors are putting in $1.2 million. And the way we structured this deal is it's going to be a promissory note, so it's going to be debt. We are personally guaranteeing it. So we're telling them you are going to get your principal back, and we guarantee it. Whether the deal goes well or not, we're also guaranteeing a 12% interest floor, so you can't earn less than 12%. We're also giving them an upside. The first $500,000 of profit of the deal goes to the investors. So for every $100,000 share, they're earning $33,000 plus some change. And the timeline is 1 to 2 years. So 1 to 2 years to get the first phase built. After we build the first phase, we can pay off our loan, pay back the investors, give them their cut of the profits. There'll be a little bit of money left over that we'll use as our down payment, and we'll get another loan and build phase 2 on our own, probably with no investors. And so I spent a lot of time crafting this offer because I knew it was important and I wanted to get this capital raised, obviously. And $1.5 million is not a small, super small raise, but not too big either. But I thought, how can I make this into a no-brainer where somebody, they feel stupid not saying yes to this deal if they have the ability to put $100,000 into it. And so I put together my deck, and I started with, the questions that I had, the things that I was the most worried about with walking into this deal. And the two things I was most worried about were, how much is this going to really cost? And two, will I be able to sell it? Like, is there demand for people to buy these individual flex bay units? So each unit is about 1,100 square feet, 22 foot wide, 50 foot deep. We're going to condo them. So each unit will have its own TMS number, tax map parcel number. And you'll be able to buy one bay, or you can buy 2 bays and take down the interior wall and have 2,200 square feet. You can buy 3 bays. And so that's kind of the structure. And so my first question was, is there demand? And so when I'm making my pitch to the investors, I'm walking them through the things that I was worried about. The population growth of the area. Somerville has grown in population by 89% since 2000. They talk about, what people earn here, and it's higher than average in South Carolina. I talked about, what about like product on the market? Like, who's my competition? And there isn't any. There's like literally 2 properties for sale in all of Somerville. One's $900,000 for 2,000 square feet. One's $1.6 million for 3,000 square feet. And that's it. There's a comp. They've got, 20, 30 warehouses down the street from us. They're beat up. They're old. They've got gravel parking lots. They've got trash everywhere. dumpsters. It looks like crap. They're getting $2,000 a month on 5-year leases, and they're booked solid for 2 years. So I know that my product's going to be the same size in a similar location and much better quality. I can probably get at least $2,000 a month in rent for that. And so those were some of the things that I mitigated on what's my price point and is there, a lot of competition in the market. Then I started to run ads. I put up ads on Facebook, and I've talked about this, but the leads poured in, and I'm talking to small businesses, and they're telling me, I've been looking for something like this for years. One guy, who actually bought a unit, signed a contract, put a deposit down. He said, dude, there's nothing like it. There's nothing, your price point is so attractive. Like, I'm going to buy this because I know when you're done, it's going to be worth $300,000, $325,000. If I can lock up $250 today, I'm willing to make that bet, put down a $5K deposit and hold. And so the demand was there in running ads. I had 7 or 8 businesses that said, I need this product. And I got 25 leads. Then I started running ads on Craigslist and LoopNet, and more leads started pouring in. And I haven't even put any signage up. I haven't even done any paid ads on LoopNet or Craigslist. So I felt really confident that this product is going to be able to move. Moving to costs, I drilled into the investors like what we had quoted out, how we're bringing in crews like Amish crews from Ohio to frame these up and do the concrete, how we're going to get our costs down, how I built houses for 15 years and I'm going to be GCing this to help keep the costs down, how we're bidding out every component to 2 or 3 subs, getting the best price on electrical and plumbing and HVAC and concrete and land clearing and framing and electric gates and everything else that we need for this project. And I showed them my budget, and I showed them my contingency, and I showed them how my allowances for the interest on the loan was built in. And I showed them how I was going to have another $350,000 war chest of cash on hand for additional overages, and really just showed them a bomb-proof model of how we can build these units for $4.2 million and sell them for $8.5 to $9 million. And so the margin of the deal becomes really safe, and the investors start to believe, well, he probably can pay me the first $500,000 in profit. I mean, if he's got a $4-point-something million profit built into this deal, there's no way I'm not going to get paid, and I'm going to get paid first. And on top of all that, Jennings, with his full reputation and net worth, is personally guaranteeing my principal and personally guaranteeing a minimum 12% interest. So as I did this and crafted this offer, when we took that to the marketplace, right, my investors and people that are interested in this, the response was incredible. I talked to literally 9 investors. Every single one of them said yes. And we raised $1.1 million in 5 days. My partner talked to 2 or 3 of his investors. He brought in the other $400,000. And so within a matter of a week, we had $1.5 million committed to this deal. And that was because we made an offer that was so good, people felt stupid turning it down. I mean, they can see the market. They can see the demand. They can see that there's no supply. They can see the inquiries that we've gotten from people that wanted to buy the units. We tell them the stories of the business owners that are looking for this. We show them the costs. We show them the contingencies. We show them the budget. We build that confidence. Then on top of that, we offer, a floor rate of 12% with a ceiling rate of 30%. That is a pretty attractive thing to be a part of. And so in putting all those pieces together, we made an offer that people didn't want to turn down. Legitimately, not one investor turned it down. By the time we got to the end, I had multiple other calls booked, and I had to talk to them and say, hey, I can only put you as an alternate. We don't have any more room in this deal. And so it was really cool to see the power of the right offer. And that's what I want to get into on this life-changing deal, the power of making the right offer to somebody and solving their problem. Okay, so let's get into this deal. We got a 103-unit motel, right? This is in a good area. I'm not going to say where it is, but it's in a good area. 103 units. And a guy in the deal room, he wants to convert these into studio apartments, 1 bedroom, and there's also some units that could be 2 bedrooms. It's going to turn into about 103 units as a long-term rental multifamily deal. And when he brought this deal to me, at first I was not too excited about it. So if you know anything about converting hotels and motels to multifamily, it's very expensive. Sometimes the city zoning will turn you down. If you're on X or Twitter, like there's a lot of people that are throwing shade at that model because it was kind of hot a few years ago and now you don't see too many people doing it. And part of that is because people are getting into these deals saying, oh, look, I can buy this for $30,000 or $40,000 a unit and this is going to be great. I'm going to spend 10 or 15K rehabbing these things and we're going to be golden. But in actuality, they're having to spend $30,000 or $40,000 per unit because they're having to cut slabs, break stuff up, reroute plumbing. You know, there's fire sprinkler systems that maybe need to be installed. You're also dealing with the city who says, no, you know, you can't convert this to multifamily. We don't want that. It's got to stay. And they're not doing their due diligence up front. And they're finding this out after they've purchased the property. So there's some definite pitfalls in these types of deals. And that's what I brought up on our Tuesday call. So on Tuesdays, we do a live deal review call and he brings this deal and I bring up all of these things. I also brought up like the demand, you know, 1-bedroom studios, they are harder to fill and they're more transient, right? If you have a family living there in a 2 or 3 bedroom, they're less likely to move than a single guy who can just pack up his stuff in a backpack and leave. And so there's more turnover on these types of units. So I'm bringing up all these objections just to make him think about these things. And so instead of getting discouraged, he said, okay, well, let me solve these problems. And he comes back to me the next week and he solved a few of them. And he comes back to me the next week and he solved a few of them. He comes back this week and he now has an accepted offer with the seller. Okay, so here's what he figured out. Number one, these units are on a crawl space. That is huge. You know, typically I don't love crawl spaces, but if you are rerouting plumbing and adding kitchenettes and stuff, you definitely want it to be on a crawl space because now the plumbers can just go under there, reroute the plumbing and pop it up through the subfloor and it's done. Way cheaper, way easier than busting up slabs, not knowing exactly where these sewer lines are and if maybe water lines are buried in the slab. Huge risk, huge cost, huge expense. He doesn't have to do any of that. That's a huge blessing. There's also a nonprofit association there that has hundreds of tenants and he has made a connection with them and they're like, we can fill this entire place up. We can pay fair market rent for them and we need this product and the government will pay us and we will pay you directly. We're going to do a master lease and pay for the entire unit with, you know, one check. So now he's not chasing rent from 100 different people. He's got one entity who's placed all these tenants in place and that could be a great thing. At least it's a plan, right? He still has a backup plan of leasing them to the general public, but he's got that in his pocket. Even if they only fill up half the unit, it's still a great start. He also looked into government grants to help him with the renovations. Now, as he got into that, it was very tenuous on how much money he could make, and he didn't want to do a deed restriction and go down that route, but he did look into that. But the biggest problem was the price. So based on the income on the property, it was worth about $2.6 to $2.8. And the income is based off of, you know, what the hotel is generating and it's a higher cap rate. And so that was a pretty, you know, tough price. Multifamily trades at a lower, more compressed cap rate. So whereas a hotel might trade at a 8, 9, or 10 cap, the same multifamily income might trade at a 6.5 to 7.5% cap rate, which means a higher valuation of the building. And that's because the income is more durable. If you have someone signing a 12-month lease, paying monthly and living there, that is a lot more forecastable, if that's a word, forecastable than, well, we had, you know, 20 rooms booked this night, we had 40 rooms booked this night, we had 30 rooms booked. Like, you don't know what your hotel income is going to be. It's not as durable as multifamily income. And so the risk is a little greater. So just by converting the income to multifamily income versus hotel income, you're going to improve the value of the property. So here's what the seller wanted. Initially, he said, I want $5 million for this, which was way too much. I mean, you may think, okay, $50,000 a unit is not so bad, but when you factor in the rehab and having to completely fill this unit up and the risk, it's not a great price. So Jim, you know, he talked with the guy and he got the guy to kind of agree that $5 million was a little out of the question, but he would take $4 million. $4 million Still kind of high, right? Because per the numbers, it's only worth about 2.8. And if he was going to resell this as a hotel, he probably would get around 2.8 to 3 million for it. Okay, so he got the guy to agree to a $4 million price. And here's where it got really, really cool. This is the creative structure that he did. And you got to bear with me. We're going to get a little technical. I want you to follow along because there's some moving parts to this type of deal structure, but you are going to get value out of this because he was able to get no money down. He's putting cash in his pocket at closing, paying for all the rehab, and owning the majority of the deal, okay? So here's how he structured it. Number one, purchase and sale agreement price, $4 million. Going to a bank. Bank is loaning $3 million against this asset, right? So they're doing a 75% LTV. That's at 7% interest. So he's got a $3 million loan at 7% interest. You may think, okay, well, he's got to bring $1 million in cash to close it. Plus he's got to come up with, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 to renovate these units, add kitchenettes, and turn it into a multifamily. So how's he going to do that? Now he needs a $1.6 million in cash. Well, this is how he did it. He talked to the seller and said, if I pay you a $4 million purchase price, I need you to hold back $2.4 million in a loan. Okay, so $2.4 million in a loan. So you're going to get the property sold. You're going to get the $4 million. Then you're going to loan me back $2.4 million. So at closing, the seller's really only walking away with $1.6 million in cash. Okay, he has an underlying loan on it. He's going to pay that off, and he's going to walk away with about $600,000 in his pocket after his closing costs. Okay, so you understand that. So now he has a $3 million loan to the bank, and he has a $2.4 million loan to the seller. Now his basis is $5.4 million. And you may start to think, whoa, he's really increasing his basis. But that also includes renovations, and here's how. So when he gets that $2.4 million loan back to him, $1 million is going as his down payment, right, for the loan. Okay, so he's going to do a transactional loan the day of closing for $1 million for his down payment. He's got to pay that transactional loan back, and he will walk away from the closing table with literally $1.4 million in cash. Now, he's also walking away from the closing table with $5.4 million in liability, but it's really only $4 million because he now has $1.4 million in cash. Okay, he can use $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 of that war chest to do his renovations. He also will have a mortgage payment of about $27,000 a month that he's got to pay, and his property is going to be empty. So he's got to have, but he has 3 years of mortgage payments set aside with this war chest. And so he's in a good position walking into the deal, and he's very well capitalized. But here's the crazy thing about this deal. The $2.4 million, the terms. So why did Jack agree to pay this guy $4 million when it was really only worth 2.8 if he just did a straight up deal? The reason being was the terms that he negotiated. 0% interest, 30-year amortization, principal only, with a 30-year term. So it's not a 5-year balloon or 2-year balloon or 10-year balloon. And I gotta say, he had more guts than I did to do that. Like, I've never asked for a 30-year term, but he asked this guy for that. And the guy wanted a guaranteed payment every month, and he wanted to be done with this hotel, and he wanted $4 million. Like, he really wanted his purchase price. He didn't want to take $2.8 million. So even though it's quote unquote 0% interest, he really is getting an interest rate because we're overpaying for the deal. Okay, so if you think about that though, that's $80,000 a year in payments. All of it's going to principal, and in 30 years, it's paid off, completely done. The underlying loan, the first position loan, is at 7% interest, and he's got his payment there. So all in, it's about $27,000. But let's do some math here. 103 units rented at, let's just say $850. The fair market rents for this, which the nonprofit is willing to pay, is $1145 per month. So let's just knock it down to $850. This equals $44,000 a month in net operating income. This is like $88,000 a month gross. He's going to have taxes, he's going to have insurance, he's going to have maintenance, he's going to have property management, all that stuff. There'll be about $40,000 to $45,000 a month left, of which he'll pay $27,000 in debt. Some of that's going right back in his pocket because he's amortizing his loan, but he still has, what, $17,000, $18,000 a month in free cash flow beyond that. Let's say you take that NOI and you divide it by a 7.5 or a 7% cap rate for multifamily. That puts the valuation at $7.5 million once he gets this thing filled up and generating $80,000 to $85,000 a month in income. You take that minus his basis of $5.3 million, he's made $2.2 million right there, which is pretty good, to be able to do that in 2 to 3 years. And he could sell it, he could pay off that note and do that, or he could hold it long term. Let's say it does work with this nonprofit and he's able to get $11.45, and that's $120,000 a month in rent. So let's just say half of that's going to go to expenses. 60,000 times 12 is 720,000. Let's divide 720,000 by a 7% cap rate. 720 divided by 0.07. That puts the valuation of the building at $10.3 million with a basis of 5.3. Now you're talking about a $5 million gain. And the underlying loan, he can refinance that into a better rate if the rates drop. He can pay that off. He can leave that $2.4 million loan in place for 40 years. And so when you start thinking about the net present value of money and what that is today, let's just say when he walks away from the closing table and he gets 1.3, 1.4 million, let's say his rehab only costs him 400 grand and he can put $1 million in investments, generating 10% per year. Over 30 years, the life of that loan, because this guy loaned him that $1 million, that 1 million grows into 17, 18 million dollars over 30 years. That is the power of controlling capital. That's the power of creative terms. So if he just did that, if he just invested the $1 million, forget about paying off the real estate and owning that asset and all the cash flow and the equity created, just doing that, this is a phenomenal deal. Now, let's go back to how much of this deal does he actually own? Well, he's got to have a loan sponsor. He's got to have somebody to help him qualify for that underlying $3 million loan, right? They're going to get maybe 20% of the deal. And that's it. He can hire a contractor. Maybe he gives away another 10% equity to other partners for helping him manage it or running the contract. He doesn't really have to, but he's going to walk away with 70 to 80% of the equity of this deal. Meaning he's going to get 70 to 80% of that $2 to $5 million profit. He's going to get 70 to 80% of that $15,000 to $20,000 a month cash flow. If he can get up to $120K a month, you're talking 60 minus 27, you're talking $33,000 a month in free net cash flow off of one deal. Yes, this stuff is hard. Yes, this stuff is hard to find. Yes, you've got to kiss frogs and talk to people, and people are going to tell you no. But he just had to find one guy who was motivated to sell, who didn't have a huge mortgage, that he could negotiate creative terms, that he wanted a steady payment every month, and he wanted his price, and he made this happen. Within 12 to 24 months, he could be set if he executes on this business plan. And so I'm really, really excited for him. I think it's a phenomenal opportunity, and I think he's going to do really, really, really well with it. And so I want to encourage you to think long term. You can do things. I'm taking a raw piece of dirt and turning it into a $9 million property with a $4 million profit. He's taking an old broken down motel. It's actually in pretty good shape, but it's a motel, and he's repurposing it into studio and 1-bedroom apartments. He found the people that could fill up the tenant base. He found the contractors that could rehab it. He found the seller that was motivated, and he negotiated phenomenal terms. And this could turn in anywhere from a $2.5 to $5 million profit to potentially $20 million over 30 years, depending on if he invests that money and how that goes. But the point I'm trying to make is People work their entire lives to scrape together $1 million, $2 million for their retirement someday. He's able to accomplish this with one deal, one time. If you want to learn these strategies and have somebody that can walk you through stuff like this, because it took weeks of going back and forth and mitigating risk and figuring this stuff out. If you're looking for that, talk to me about the deal room. Look at the deal room, jump in the deal room, apply to be a part of the deal room. That's where he found the person that's sponsoring his loan. That's where he found the contracts and the structure and how to make the offers. That's where he even found his loan broker that's providing the $3 million underlying loan. All these tools, all these people, all these relationships, all these connections are right here in the deal room. So if this is something you want to check out, go to whatisthedealroom.com, book a call. I'll jump on a call with you, or Yaden, my partner. We'll talk to you about it and how we can get you into one deal one time that can change your life. All right, guys, be great. Make it a great week and unlock your life. Peace.